my responsibility for changing the world to somebody else. And then I sit back and I gripe and moan why things aren't better. Instead, to ask the question, what can I do to change my piece of this world for the better? And that's the key. I think what gets us caught up in this is the grand scale of it. It's the word world. Because most of us tend to interpret world as, you know, capital W world. Or as we used to say when we were kids, the whole wide world. And I'll tell you something right now. And I don't think it's that much of a stretch, honestly. If you could figure out a way to change the so-called whole wide world for the better through the work that you do every day, I say, God bless you, more power to you, have at it. What are you waiting for? But I'm also suggesting that it's not the only option that we have. Because this whole wide world that we live in is made up of a lot of smaller W worlds, small W worlds, that we do have direct influence over every day. So what about, for example, changing the world of your industry, changing the world of your consultants, changing the world of your customers, changing the world of your community, changing the world of your neighborhood, your family, one person in your family for that matter. I mean, these aren't any less noble, are they? And they do add up, and they are literally, and literally is a word, by the way, that I use literally, within the scope of every single person sitting in this theater this afternoon, should we choose to step up to that challenge. And if nothing else, I'm here today to ask you to choose to step up to that challenge. If you're not in the business of changing the world for the better, then frankly, I don't know what business you're in. I mean, you give people an opportunity to literally change their lives. And change your life, change the world. I mean, these are words that we use pretty loosely. These are words that have become a bit cliched over the years, right? Well, I think that our job as leaders is to take the words, change the world, change your life, whatever the scope is, to take it out of the world of the cliche and put it into action. And the place to start is with this non-rhetorical question, number 3 for the afternoon, which is just that simple question. How are we going to change the world of our customers, team members, hosts, consultants, market, industry? I mean, you pick, you define what world is. And what I'm asking you to do is to put this question on the table and begin to ask it of yourselves and of one another. And I'm the first to admit that this question is much easier to ask than it is to answer, right? But I know this for sure. We're never going to answer unless we ask it. So start asking it and see where it leads you. And it's much easier to answer, fundamentally, than it is to do something about it. But nonetheless, we still have to do something about it. It's not enough to ask and answer the question. We have to prove that we mean what we say. And this is where that proverbial, and we heard this phrase just a few minutes ago, rubber meets the road. This is it, right? This is what it all comes down to. We have to prove that we mean what we say. I can talk a good game, that's easy. But making sure that my actions line up with it is something else altogether. I mean, we've called this any number of things over the years. We've called it walk your talk. We've called it practice what you preach. We've called it put your money where your mouth is. A couple of my mentors, Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner, had a very interesting kind of cross-cultural way of putting it. They called it simply dwizzywid, is how you pronounce that. Which stands for what, would you guess? Do what you say you will do. Do what you say you will do. Do what you say you will do. It's the basic, simple definition of personal credibility. That's all this is. Because if I say one thing and do another, which many people do, if I say one thing and do another, at the very least I'm going to confuse you. And at the very worst, I'm going to completely disengage you, and you are going to write me off 100%. If I say one thing and do another, you're not going to follow me anywhere, ultimately, because you don't believe me, you don't trust me. Let's see if we can demonstrate this real quickly, okay? Would you all put your hands out in front of you like so, please? Okay, it's going to be very simple. The drill is, I just want to test how coherent you guys are as an organization, as a team, right? So we're all going to clap once, just once, at exactly the same moment. So it's going to sound like one loud, thunderous clap, okay? I'll be the leader, so let's all clap when I count 3. On the count of 3. Are you ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Okay, one more time. One more time. Try it again. Try it again. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. I still got a few of you there. All right. So let's analyze this for a moment. The first time around, what were you following, my words or my actions? Almost to a person, right? Actions speak louder than words. We all know that. We're kind of wired for that. Our example is really important. But the second time around, what were you following, my words or my actions? Yeah, some of you were and some of you weren't. Did you feel the confusion in here? So it's like, what does he want, man? Because I'm saying one thing and I'm doing another, and pretty soon, if I kept doing that to you, you're not going to do anything I ask you to do anymore, are you? Here, try this. Put your finger in the air like so, if you would. See, some of you are reluctant to do that already. All right, now take that finger and put it right here in your chin. Your chin, that's this part of your face right here.
I know, it's actually,
you knew I was setting you up. And about a third of you still fell for that. So if I kept doing that to you, pretty soon it's a different finger you're going to be putting in the air. But pretty soon you're not going to do anything I ask you to do anymore. Well, that's just a cute little game, but if you magnify that 1,000 times, that's what happens every day when you take on a leadership role. You step under a microscope and people watch everything you do. And when I say everything, I'm not exaggerating, I mean everything. So we've got to make sure that our own actions are living up to our own words. Dwizzywid is about proving ourselves to other people. So that's one way to prove yourself to other people. The other way is to really work with this stuff and to answer this question, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to do this? That's non-rhetorical question number 4 for the afternoon. If the answer is no, all sounds quite lovely, but no thank you, then I hope you have been grossly over-entertained for the last bit of time. I think and there's nothing wrong with that. If the answer, however, is yes, do I really want to do this? How do we go about doing it? So here's one way to do this. Now, the handout that you have is a version of this. I've made available for you an ebook that I call the Daily Handbook for Extreme Leaders. It takes all these questions and it takes them more in depth. It's in, like I said, an ebook, electronic format. And I've made this available to you. If you also would like the slides, I can make these available to you as well. Would you like the slides? Okay. All right, so if you want at least the handbook, and if not the handbook, then both the handbook and the slides, you can do it one of 2 ways. You can text the keyword TPC and your name and your email to 58885, or you can go to stevefarber.com/TPC, and you can find it there. Okay? That's a hidden page. It's not on the navigation, so you have to remember that URL. Okay? So this is about, listen, it's really easy to sit here and listen. You've heard lots of speakers over the years, and speaking is part of what I do, but it's just part of what I do. I'm in the business of helping people to become leaders. And I know this from experience over and over again. I've seen it over and over again that people don't become better leaders by sitting and listening to speakers. They become better leaders by taking the ideas and putting them to practice. This will help you to do that. But then there's another element to this. And this gets even a little bit more personal. How do you prove yourself? This is about proving yourself to other people. How do you prove yourself to yourself? How do you know that you're really doing this stuff and not just desiring it, thinking about it, talking about it, understanding it, which is all easy? How do we know that we're really in the game? This comes down to what I've referred to as the pursuit of the OSM. Now let me explain what I mean here by way of metaphor. You're looking here at a picture of Jimmy Shea. Jimmy Shea won the gold medal in the 2002 Winter Olympics in the skeleton event. Any of you ever see skeleton? All right, let me describe it for the rest of y'all. Skeleton is an example of an extreme sport. It's like extreme luge or extreme toboggan, as if that weren't extreme enough to begin with, right? It takes place on that same kind of track. The difference is, as you can kind of see here from the picture, is that first of all, the skeleton board is a little thing. It's like the size of a roasting pan. And they lie down on this thing on their stomachs, and they go head first down the mountain with the chin about 6 inches off of the ice as they're screaming down the mountain like 1,000,000 miles an hour. So you can imagine what happens when you wipe out doing this sort of thing, right? Not a pretty sight. This is why it's called an extreme sport. These people are extremely nuts. So I'm not suggesting that you have to take up skeleton in order to understand what we're talking about here, but imagine for a moment that you wanted to, okay? You saw it on TV, you thought it looked pretty cool, so you figure you're going to give it a try for yourself. So you go out, you get your equipment together, get yourself a roasting pan, steal your kid's bicycle helmet, and then the day finally arrives where you're ready to take on the mountain. So I'd like you to imagine this scene, okay? You're approaching the track from down below, and you're checking out the angle from down here. And you're saying to yourself, that's going to be challenging, but it's going to be awesome because it looks manageable, even though it's challenging. You think you can handle it. But then you take the lift up to the top of the mountain. And now, for the very first time, at the top of the mountain, with your board in your hand, you step up towards the edge of the mountain, towards the track, and the world kind of opens up in front of you, right? And you get up to the edge of the track, and for the very first time, you look down. Is it any different from up here than it was from down there? Is it any different? Yeah, first of all, what's the angle like from up here? There's no angle, man. It's a straight drop into the abyss. So now, let's just say you're having second thoughts, right? Your hands are starting to shake, your heart's beating in your chest, sweat's breaking out of your forehead, and you're saying to yourself, you know what? I think I'd rather just go home. That'd be much better. But you can't do that. You can't walk down the mountain now because everybody's looking at you. So instead, you give yourself a little pep talk. You say, okay, you know what? I'm just going to try it. I'll just try it for a couple of minutes and we'll see how it goes. So you get yourself into position, you're teetering on the edge, and finally you take a deep breath and you push off, and before you know it, bang, you're going 1,000,000 miles an hour, and you suddenly realize that you are now 100% committed to this idea, right? There is no turning back now, there is no off switch, and typically at that point in the process, there are two words that come to mind. What are they? That's that. Excellent job, class. Nicely done. M stands for moment. You got the idea? All right, so here's what I'm suggesting. The OSM is a natural thing. It's a natural part of the human experience. It's a natural built-in indicator that we have as human beings that we're doing or about to do something that has extraordinary potential to it. You know this from your own experience. Anytime you've taken on something that you knew would be good for you, even though intellectually you knew it would be good for you, the experience, because it was something you never did before, tell me there was no OSM there. For many of you, tell me there was no OSM the first time you ever did your own cooking show. No OSM? Walk in the park, was it? It's a natural thing. And in fact, I would take it this far. If you are not experiencing the OSM with some frequency in the context of your leadership endeavors, in your business, and you're calling yourself a leader, you're in the poser category. Because the OSM is just a natural part of the leadership experience. If you're not experiencing the OSM, you're not there yet, push it to the point where it scares you a little bit. Now you know you're in the game. This is very counterintuitive to most of us because most of us tend to interpret the OSM as a sign that something is wrong. And oftentimes it is. But just as often, and in the right context, it's actually a sign that something is right. I saw Jimmy Shea interviewed the day after he won the gold medal, and the question that he was asked was, do you remember the first time you ever tried this skeleton thing? And his answer was such a beautiful description of the OSM that I scrambled around for a piece of paper to write it down, as is my wont. So here's what he said. Oh yeah, I remember. First time I went down that run, I was going way too fast, and I realized I just made the biggest mistake of my life. But when I got to the bottom, I couldn't wait to get back up and do it again. Very simple. I love that he used the word mistake and realized. Because first of all, it was obviously not a mistake. He's a gold medalist, so it was a mistake. Did he ever make mistakes? Sure. Did he ever crash and burn? Quite gloriously, I'm sure. But he's a gold medalist, so it wasn't a mistake. And when he says, I realized I made a mistake, it's an interesting word, because realized and reality, pretty much the same thing. So here's what he's telling us. Here's what he's telling us that his brain was telling him. His brain was telling him in that first time he went down the run. His brain was saying, Jimmy, this is bad. That's what his brain was saying. His brain wasn't saying, my, what an exhilarating experience. I'm so glad I came. We shall be a gold medalist one day. His brain was saying, Jimmy, you're a moron. But there was no way he was ever going to win a gold medal, or anybody else that's ever won a gold medal would ever win one without that frequent experience of the OSM. It is exactly the same way for us in our work. If you're really cultivating love, really generating energy, really inspiring audacity, really trying to change the world, the OSM will stand as proof. If we're not, push it to the point where you feel it. Now we know we're in the game. Thank you very much for having me, Coach.